Hello all. Today I'm going to read and comment on a booklet that I put together in the 1990s, probably, let's see if there's a copyright here, but I would say it would be probably about 1995. That's my guess. And it was just before we were going on a sacred journey. And I believe this was the sacred journey to Egypt, the Sinai, and extended into Jordan and Israel, but that latter part was just a few people. The main journey, it was Simeon, my former husband Simeon, and I were facilitating a group, a sacred journey to Egypt and the Sinai. And we had not done anything like this before, but I was guided by my inner planes mentor Thoth to create this little booklet called Going Forth with the Gods, a guidance manual for sacred journeys. And so I'm going to read it to you, and I'd like to make a few comments along the way. What is meant by a journey of initiation? First, we need to decipher the truth of the term initiation. For this, we look to the grand initiator, Thoth Hermes, or, Hermes is the Greek name for him. I rarely call him that anymore. As the master architect of the Great Pyramid, he stands at the threshold of innermost passage into the sacred rites of the soul. Now, Thoth is a title, and the soul that was Thoth, known as Thoth Hermes, actually lived in two different embodiments. The first, Tosmuzurud, that came from the blue star Rigel. He was not born on this planet, and he was the one that brought the templates, or the blueprints, I believe is a better word, for the pyramid complex at Giza. But previous to that, there was a chamber already there. This was even more ancient, underground. But the pyramids were built by him, or rather he oversaw that as Tosmuzurud. Then he left, left in the sense of the embodiment, and came back not long after that into a physical incarnation into the earth, but yet with star genetics nonetheless, as Thoth Reis-Misavafra. And so as Thoth Reis-Misavafra, he was here during the great deluge, the time tsunami, that put all of that area underwater. And there was some destruction going on with the actual pyramids themselves, which is a whole other story. So he came back, and he, everyone that was involved in the sacred work and realized that he was the same soul. And they, he didn't have any trouble bringing forth that recognition again. There were various things that were obvious to those who were the sages of the time. Just as now, when the Dalai Lama comes back again and again in incarnation, that kind of thing. So he came back and he reconstructed the pyramids, among doing other things. So when we speak of him as the grand initiator, Thoth Hermes, we're really talking about more than one lifetime, two at the very least. We see him in his archetypal form as the ibis-headed man. Around his neck is the 7-jeweled key of Thoth, a template for the organization of the eternal and cleansing fire of the Ishwood light. I hope I said that right. It's actually a Hebraic word, and it's Eshyouhod. From the keys of Enoch, and I quote, this is key 318, I guess you'd say stanza or whatever, 63. Through the work of Melchizedek in cooperation with Metatron and the Christ, the Nartumid light, the eternal light of the Father, is used with the Ishwood light the devouring light of purification, to rebalance the lower spheres and to throw the forces of creative limitation into confusion. That's the end of the quote. But it then goes on to definition of Ishwood as given in the Cuisine glossary, the devouring fire as nemesis, negative entropy, and judgment against the fallen lords of light. And it gives several names of the fallen lords of light and says, and the false priesthood who have kept the root races of the planets in karmic bondage, oblivious to the liberation of the soul, the brotherhoods of light, and the love of the Father. And that's the end of that quote. In the Thoth's right hand, extended before his heart, arise his three flames, the threefold flame of love, power, and wisdom. His left hand is raised, holding the Ankh of life, which is the regeneration of spirit as it passes through matter and reconciles its return path to the divine. He beckons to the initiate to enter through the threshold and accept innermost passage into the divine fire of rebirth and awakening. True initiation, as was given in the ancient days of Lemuria, Atlantis, and early Egypt, was a path of receiving light mathematical codes or language of spiritual light into the light body of the individual, which then filtered down into the sacred centers of the body-soul, body/soul, as that initiate accepted deep inner exposure to his/her own divinity. A journey of initiation, then, can be a voyage either solely of spirit or both a physical and spiritual nature, physical and spiritual nature, and can include a journey through sacred centers and temples designed by high initiates of the past, present, and future. Through this journey, one enters layers or levels of ascent into the higher vibrations of light that contain the keys and codes which will quicken the initiate to his/her own starlight flight into greater oneness with the cosmos. The only focus of such a sacred initiatic physical journey should be to move into these planetary fields of light in order to participate exclusively in the divine format which has been designed to embed the patterns of living light into the etheric body of the initiate. Thus, a journey of initiation is a specific path of receipt. On the physical level of the journey, only those sites which possess the correct light codes, links for the initiation at hand, should be entered into on the voyage. Time should be allowed at each location to fully receive their encoded phases of initiation in the light mathematical codes inherent to this process. A sufficient amount of integration time must be allotted after each location, whereby the individual participant can be in a quiet, meditative state and not be bombarded with sights and sounds which have frequencies that register outside the envelope of the designated initiatory path. Now, before I continue, that's exactly what we did on both of our sacred guided voyages. The first one to Egypt to Sinai, and that was in 95, yes. And then in 97, 96, 97, it's been a long time, we went to Europe and Scotland, England, France, and Spain. And we didn't go all over the place. We went to very specific places. And this is what this is all about here. What Thoth is saying, if you're going to go on an initiatic journey, you don't hit as many temples and sacred sites and buildings and places as you possibly can. That's a tourist. And you can have fun as a tourist, and you can actually have, you can have spiritual experiences as a tourist. But true initiatic journeys mean that you go to very specific places. And we did have maybe 3 days in different locations for what we called activating the shopping chakra, where people could go out and, sample the sites and pick up some gifts for friends and their own stuff and whatever, and do things on their own. But they were very specifically placed so that it did not interrupt the frequencies of the actual sacred initiatic journey or the in-between time where people needed to absorb what they'd been through and integrate it. In making a decision to embark upon a physical spiritual journey of initiation, rather than a metaphysical tour of sacred sites, one would need to investigate as to whether or not these above principles are being adhered to if that journey is being conducted by someone other than yourself. And of course, by you also, if self-orchestrated. Once your physical course has been decided, proceed then to the arena of preparing body, mind, and soul for the journey ahead. In the ancient temples, great initiation was reserved for those who had undergone many preceding levels of lesser initiation. In the current time, souls are gathering to move into direct encounter with the greater. They have been incarnated through many levels of lower initiation, and some through higher levels. Yet this age is the deciding moment when they are being asked to integrate it all in the now. Thus, through what Thoth calls the New Earth initiations, the candidate either chooses or rejects himself. But this cannot be decided through personal ego. It must come from an inward calling to be true to the greater nature abiding within thee. I'm going to turn a page now. Apologies, because I know it's going to sound crinkly. Quote. These are old books. They were put together way back when, so their pages are a little weathered. Chapter 2, Working Within the Matrix. Preparation for your journey of initiation. It is important to create an environment or space of gestation for your sacred journey at least 2 to 3 weeks before departure. Establish a certain period of time each day to be set aside for contemplation and meditation concerning the upcoming initiation. It need not be more than 15 minutes to 30 minutes out of each day or night. Now, I will say at this point in time, it could be even less. If 30 minutes is long for you, you're busy, you're getting things ready, whatever. But so it doesn't have to, it's like, oh, I don't have time for that much time, so I'm not going to do it at all. Even if you did it 3 minutes a night, it would be worth something, But it is important, if you're going to go on a sacred journey like this, to take some quality time. Let's just put it that way. Some quality time each day or night to go into space with this, inner space. The importance of this practice is not so much the amount of time you spend with it, but the intent to do so, following through consistently each day with the procedure and the quality of the interaction you experience with this procedure. This tells the universe that you are creating a gateway through which to receive what you need to know and experience for your full perception in the upcoming sacred journey. Let me read that again. This tells the universe that you are creating a gateway through which to receive what you need to know and experience for your full participation in the upcoming sacred event. Suggested procedure for meditative interaction. Everyone has their own way of meditation, even within standard spiritual practices, for each soul contains a unique design of spirit that finds its own path through the convolutions of mind and matter to the source. For journeys of initiation, it is especially important to open to divine process in your meditations and not become too fixed in mental exercise. You will be walking upon sacred ground, possibly at several different locations on the one journey. As to become more aware of the energy essence at each of these sites, in your mind, visualize them in the order of your procession, in the order your procession will take place in. At each one in your vision, go through a pre-initiation integration with the sacredness of the land itself. Alert the guardians of the site that you will soon be physically visiting this location and ask that they part the veil of mystery for your time there. Make a statement of respect to these guardians and to the land they protect. Well, now, of course, you'd be doing this when you got there, and we're going to address that. But this is in preparation, because when you arrive at a sacred site, first of all, you've been traveling planes and whatever, and you've got jet lag, and you're sort of disoriented because you're in a new location. especially if you're not used to travel. Some of you go to so many sacred sites and places, it's probably a given, but a lot of us don't do that. And you're going to be kind of like, wow, you're going to be wow struck, and the energies are going to be hitting you, and you're liable to just almost space out with it. So if you prepare beforehand, you literally go there before you go there, if you know what I mean, and address the guardians of the land, address the energy of the place to some extent. This is a good way to then, when you get there, you're going, aha, yes, this is what I knew I would be here to receive. This is what I knew I'd feel in general. And now I'm going to proceed forward. Request a totem animal, that is, a Davic being, to protect and guide you through the sacred course of that particular site. Whenever you wish to enter the matrix of that location, call upon your creature to guide you. Be open to whatever spirit brings you here, even if it doesn't seem to make sense. You may even be given a creature from another world. Once you have made your initial statement and request at each site, repeat this procedure in essence each day, but be open and flexible to allow an evolution of the process to unfold. Now, in the book, the next stage is mantras to work with, and I'm going to skip that for now because I want to make part 2 of this video very short, where I'm going to go through the mantras and all of that. So we're going to put that aside just for a moment. Intrusions of the outer world. As you draw close upon the departure date for your experience of the chosen land area and structures, it is very likely you will notice an increase in the intrusive consciousness of the outer world encroaching upon your space. Through the universal law of attraction of opposites, you will gain a greater awareness of the oppositional forces whenever you open more fully in a highly focused commitment to spirit. You will not only be more sensitive to the already pervading presence of these forces, but you will initially attract even more resistance as you stir the cauldron of the spiritual dynamic you are creating. This expands your field of action, which in turn dislodges old structure. This breaking loose emancipates ripples of cause and effect out from the center of your field, sending a clear signal to opposing forces that you are on the move. These forces will then rush in to fill whatever space of uncertainty or imbalance you may have concerning your intention. Yet you need not become a pawn in this ritual. Once you set your intention and begin your first action toward completion, it is important to also insert a thought form of love into the whole process. By love, it is meant to project a heart-centered light force outward toward whatever energies are incoming as a result of your forward expansion. Creating and consistently speaking an affirmation to this effect would be especially potent. An example offered by Thoth is the following. As I place my intention into the mobilization of the spiritual dynamic, so I send outward into the wake of my forward progress a heart-centered ray of unconditional love that will envelop any and all energy which comes into my space as a result of my actions. Turning the page. You may wish to rephrase the above into simpler and more memorizable words, but this affirmation contains the essence that needs to be affirmed and spoken. Thoth stresses that it is important not to rally any of your own oppositional power against any forces which would appear to block or threaten your movement of spirit. Instead, one needs to become transparent to these retrograde energies simply by allowing them to pass through your emotional body. Any reactive negative feelings on your part will cause these unwanted vibrations to penetrate more deeply into your life field. Know that once you truly surrender to the potential of your intention of spirit rather than to the limitation of your fears concerning it, you will be above the clouds of dissipation, ascending into the true blue of divine order, ascending into the clear blue of divine order. the group and you. Your intention has come into manifestation, and you are now embarking upon your journey of initiation. Very likely you will not be alone in this event, but will be a member of a group of persons who also desire their experience with the sacred. Some of these people you may know, others you will be meeting for the first time in this life at the threshold of this momentous occasion. You are aware that this voyage could be a turning point in your spiritual pathing, and you perhaps may have some concern that sharing this experience with others could diffuse your personal perception of what takes place. Certainly, this is a possibility when several souls come together from different karmic and spiritual backgrounds to create together a field of consciousness and renewal of the holy within them. However, you are an individual participant. You, as an individual participant, have the power to become an anchor for the group. By anchor, it is not meant a leader, but one who clearly holds a defining point of connection to source in the combined light matrix of the group. Where there is one anchor, so others are attracted to that vibration and become anchors as well. A whole assembly of light anchors is a powerful experience, no matter what the undertaking. How does one become a light anchor in a group? There are divergent outer ways to achieve this goal, but we will address here the essence involved. Most simply put, call upon the guides and guardians of the sacred journey to use you as a sentinel of light. Ask and ye shall receive. When it says guides and guardians, it means, in the inner, not physical people that are guiding your tour. This is a profound truth. Then, as you proceed with your fellow voyagers, continue to be aware on a moment-to-moment basis of the light frequencies which will be transmitted through you and expanded into the throng of your group. Additional group synergy procedures conducted at intervals during the sojourn, especially before entering specific initiatic periods, will further this intention. Such collective work involves coming together in meditational intention to create harmony and synergy before the souls involved in this evolving exploration. I also want to add here, by spreading your light into the group in a soul anchor perspective, you're not spreading your intentions, other than the intentions of purity, connection, heart resonance, grounding, those things. But everyone kind of has their own agenda in what they want to spiritually accomplish, or their belief system that goes into the picture. It's really better when you're going through these processes for yourself to suspend that belief system, to suspend your intentions, other than to be centered and balanced and in contact with spirit. That doesn't mean your belief system's wrong or your intentions are wrong. It just means that you want to expand the envelope in every way possible. So that's the first thing. But also, if you send those signals into the group, you're imposing your belief systems, your intentions, your desire to have achieved in the process into the other people's space. And this is, obviously not the right thing to do. So what you're doing in your light anchor role is simply expanding the envelope of light from your heart-centered being. And that is the most important thing. So let me see. Now I've lost my place. Here we are. While existing in synergy within the gathering, having your alone time is also essential. Take the time to be by yourself in quiet reflection, to absorb and integrate your personal experiences and feelings. Do not wait until you return home for this. You will need to integrate certain layers of these deep consciousness releases as they are presented to you. Do not fear sharing the sacred, yet find your individual place within it. Once you do, it cannot be trespassed upon or violated by another, for if you are at peace with your own journey, another's seeking only serves to heighten your awareness of personal sovereignty with spirit. Home again. expanding the sacred matrix into the third dimensional reality. You're back. While you know you received a great deal, your head and heart are still busy exchanging information. You feel somewhat detached from your old existence. Even your friends, family, and possessions seem out of place and a little strange to you. You are also quite likely physically fatigued from the many plane trips in different environments, not to mention the adjustments to emanations from higher power centers. Your mind tells you that you have completed the journey and initiations involved, but your emotions are still quivering from the experience. You will find that what served you before your sacred passage seemed unsatisfying now. Maybe I should have said dissatisfying. Instead of clarity, you may have a sense of vagueness about your current reality, and despondency could set in. Yet this is the most meaningful time of the whole adventure. It is the all-important moment of reconciliation, when you are being given the opportunity to bring your newfound spiritual depth up to the surface of the everyday world. You cannot escape this world and dwell in the temples forever, as part of your being longs to do. You are on this earth to integrate spirit into matter, and this will not be accomplished if you are hidden away from the harshness and tedium of the 3D experience. But now you have a finer compass with which to navigate the currents of life. This is not something you won in the bargain, but was freely given you in the temples and sanctified places of old, and in the deepest recesses of your inner temple, a sanctuary of ages which has awaited to receive you for centuries of incarnation. You crossed the threshold, and now the memory and the truth of that passage abides with you forever. You cannot be the same as you were before your departure on this glorious rendezvous with the sacred dweller in your midst. You have seen her, his face, and it is you. You must not turn your back on this most precious knowledge and behave as you did before the revelation was laid open to you. Do not fight the process of recovery. Allow yourself the latitude to change your thoughts and feelings, setting a new and truer course upon the horizon. It is natural for you to feel disconnected from certain aspects of your life before initiation. This is a transitional time. Let it be expressed with detached observation and acceptance. Soon you will begin to find a greater kinship with life through a perspective that had not before been acknowledged by you. Accept that you are a changeling who is ever becoming the greater part of the soul self. In your post journey meditations, ask that you may be used by Spirit in your new and expanded reality to whatever ends serves the greater good. By making a commitment to offer up to the light what you have gained through grace, you are setting the dove upon the wind, and your heart will soar within it. I'd like to include here something I have mentioned in some other works that I put out, but when we do something of spirit that is a service to the planet, and any initiatory journey you take, while it's serving your inner spirit and soul self, you're serving the planet as well. You're going to these sites, you're integrating with energies, you're helping to release codes that are kind of stuck in those sites because they're no longer useful to them, or maybe they were used for things at certain times they shouldn't have been. And so all of this energy you're helping to process and clear in yourself and in the planet. So when you're in a role of service, Thoth speaks of it as having a grail cup, and you're filling that cup, and you're filling that cup with the power of your service, the power of your higher spiritual intention that is acting out, that is being served, that is serving rather, and being served. When you bring it back, you've got this full grail cup. And that is the moment when you're being asked to return the cup to the altar. You're going to want to go, there's a part of you that's going to go, oh, no. I filled this cup. This is mine. I want to drink from it forever. But you're being asked to give the cup back to the altar. And what does that really mean? It just means opening up your heart and soul experience and saying, this power is thine, not mine. And of course, all power in the universe, you're a part of all power in the universe. You're not giving up your power. You're saying that your service is not to power. Your service is to the divinity that lies within. So you're willing to give that cup back, full as it is. And when you do, when you truly do that, at first you may feel kind of empty because that power tingle that you got through all that journey, that power tingle may not be there anymore, not at that time. But once you do that, it comes back to you 100, 1,000-fold. But it comes back to you in the higher elevated light frequencies that your soul hungrily embraces, but not for the sense of the lower power feeling that you get when you first make contact with these energies in your soul self. Oops, excuse me. I'm going to have to take this. I'll put on pause for a moment. Well, sorry about that, but we will continue here. What was I saying? Oh, yes, about the cup. I think I pretty well said enough about that, but you know, that is a powerful thing when you return the cup to the altar. And it's a seductive thing to not want to return it. And you'd think, oh, well, of course I want to return it. I serve the spirit. I'm a servant of light. I want to do this. But it's just that the energy of it is seductive, and you don't even realize that it is acting out within you. And so it's like, it's a natural thing that it's going to do that. Don't beat yourself up over it. But when you feel it, when you feel that, you know, if you do, just know that that's what it is. And you say, okay, I see what it is. I'm just going to surrender that cup of light. And that is the finale of that whole experience. When I say finale, nothing is ever a finale because time is something that is eternal. So your soul will relive all those things over and over again in a very positive way, let's hope. You know, if you return the cup, it will be a very positive way. Now, there's a part in this book that talks about shopping for light mathematical codes, what to bring back with you to enhance your initiation. I think I'll just go ahead and read this. So you're in a foreign and exciting country. It is a memorable occasion, and you wish to bring back mementos of this trip for yourself and others not fortunate enough to be sharing the experience with you. Yet you are not, yet you are not on a sightseeing tour, but involved in a very special expression of the sacred in your life. Nothing you do on this journey, not even shopping, should be excluded from the greater intention of spirit that brought you here. Thoth tells us that like pixie dust, you will be returning with intelligent particles of light consciousness in your field that you did not possess before. Most of this will be procured in the ancient places and through initiational procedures, but some of it will be brought back home in the objects you choose to collect in these locations. This brings us to what a friend jokingly calls activation of the shopping chakra. But before we enter the parameters of this unknown territory, let us more clearly define the meaning of light mathematical codes in the context of Thoth's interpretation. Light mathematical codes are intelligent links with the mind of spirit, and it integrates with matter. It is a language of light that communicates how matter reconciles with the greater organization of etheric being. Matter is density, but as anyone knowledgeable of basic physics knows, it is also not solid. There is space between and within molecules and atoms, and this space, as most metaphysicians fathom, is a vibrating field of potential in which new realities may be spun and just as easily dissipated. Thoth reveals that it is this space between and within the molecules and atoms that is impregnated with light mathematical codes, the pixie dust of the Godhead. How do these mysterious codes get there? The intelligence which permeates all existence travels through bits of high-definition light, which is the medium of spiritual cohesion. It moves from one medium to another through the linking of like evolutionary environments. For example, let us visualize two objects which can either be living or inanimate to our understanding. A and B both contain vibrations that have been developed in similar environments, yet there is a slight difference between them. In this scenario, A carries more evolved vibrations than B. Thus, when they come into proximity, what qualifies as proximity will vary depending upon objects and circumstances. They will exchange light mathematical code language, and potentially the lesser evolved patterns will, through the law of vibration, be elevated to the greater. Obviously, with living beings, one does not become more spiritual simply by being in the presence of a greater evolved personage. However, the potential is made available through the exchange of light mathematical codes between them. Well, those of us who have gone to gurus or, to speakers that emanate a lot of light and spiritual consciousness, don't you feel more elevated by it? Don't you feel just the energy themselves, not even what they're saying? You feel that energy, and you feel, if you're receptive, you're feeling the capacity in your own being to expand and evolve along those lines. And it usually happens in varying degrees. With inanimate objects, there is no personal will to impede the potential, and thus the exchange does accelerate the lesser to the level of the greater, provided the personal will of the possessor of the objects does not counteract that procedure. And counteracting can be just being unaware, and being very materialistic, or just in having a lot of hardship going on in one's life, and you're just ignoring and blocking the energy coming out of the sacred objects. There's all kinds of ways that could happen. But at the same time, there have been miracles involving sacred objects, whether it's crosses, of a Christian context, or Buddhist medallions, or whatever, that do manage to penetrate even when that person is in great distress. When a human exchanges light mathematical codes with an inanimate object, the person is in control of the transfer. On subliminal level, the individual decides just what and how much they are willing to receive from the object. Light mathematical codes can also be inserted into both animate and inanimate matter by masters, devas, or angelics of the greater domain. Blessed items, so to speak. Let us now return to items one might find in curio shops or marketplaces in foreign countries. From the tourist crafted to the most exclusive merchandise, do not be deceived. Depending upon the path this object has taken, both physically and spiritually, before it reaches your appraising eye, the cheap token might contain more light mathematical codes aligned to your field than the expensive item. Then again, just as easily the reverse could be true. One cannot come to a determination by craftsmanship alone, although the artisan who takes pride in his work is more likely to impose light mathematical codes of sensitivity and grace into his production. Remember, what you bring into your possession will affect you as you exchange light mathematical codes with the object. This is why relics can become sacred and actually initiate healing in individuals. The same in reverse is true of items which are cursed. When you are upon a sacred journey, you are magnetizing into your field a more intense array of energies, and thus light mathematical codes, some good for your process, some may not be so good, as addressed in Chapter 2, Intrusions of the Outer World. You may become aware of the difference and ferret out what you do and don't want attached to your sacred experience. Discernment in selection. When faced with decisions as to what to accept into one's experience. Often persons of metaphysical inclination gravitate towards such methods as muscle testing and pendulums. While these can be viable tools, both informs us that for most people, these procedures can be unreliable, quite unreliable actually. This is not based on the degree of a person's sensitivity or intuition as is commonly thought. For instance, I, who have source translated, I hear they say here for over 30 years, that's over 50 years, have been discouraged by Thoth in using a pendulum. He tells me quite simply that I'm not very good at it. In order to maintain a high degree of accuracy with both pendulum and muscle testing, one needs to be attuned to the electromagnetic field in a specific way. Since the ins and outs of such biophysical science are not the topic of this manual, we will not pursue them further here, other than to say that unless your accuracy has been proven in these techniques, it is best not to attempt them in trying to determine what you should come home with from your sacred journey. Instead, Thoth suggests the following format that he calls heart synergy. While still not foolproof, it removes you from the arena of electromagnetics and places you into the more reliable realm of heart feeling, which is much more electric in nature. First, of course, electromagnetics has electricity in it, but electric, we're speaking about higher electric presence. First, consider only those objects to which you are instantly drawn. If you have to stop and say to yourself, I wonder if I really like or want it, then eliminate it from the start. Then take the object of your affection and place it in front of you, somewhat away from other merchandise, so that the item you're working with is at least a foot from any other object. It is important that for this particular part of the procedure, you do not hold the object. This is in order to keep your biophysical and thus electromagnetic field from sending you separate and perhaps conflicting signals. Thus, you need to place it on something and stand about 2 feet away from it, facing the item. Take a moment, compose yourself, and project a rose-pink beam of light from your heart to the item in question. Place an intention to move this exploratory, can't say that word, light inside the auric field of the object. At the same time, qualify that your physical and subtle bodies are shielding from any electromagnetic energy forms that are within the object, or around you, I should say. As your beam is now within the piece, summon your guardian or guides to open the scroll for you through your heart center, not your mind. Ask that if this item to be yours, you wish to know so by the experience of a flaming within your heart. I'm turning a page, if I can get hold of it here. Seems to be glued together. Okay, within your heart center. This flaming would manifest itself as a burning or tingling sensation in your heart chest area, possibly accompanied by light in your inner sight. But allow Spirit to give you whatever indication that it so chooses. If the flaming hers, then take the object into your hands and see what you feel. For at that point, your body will be heart aligned, which should synchronize your electromagnetic field with heart-mind impulse, at least for the time being. Still, do not try muscle testing or pendulum. Simply hold the item and feel its presence in your space. If you still feel the flaming, it is at this juncture that you allow yourself to receive its full energy presence so that its light mathematical codes may mingle with yours. Let yourself energetically converse with this object for a few moments. It is then that you should know for sure if this is something you wish to bring into your sacred circle and take home with you. Now, something I really missed the boat on here. I should have talked about, if you're in a shop, you got this one item that you're looking at, you have a zillion items around you. So the very first thing you should do is to set yourself in a corridor of a sheathing of some kind, like a light sheathing or something that says, I'm only focusing on this one item. Everything else in the store, the people, the objects, the ground, everything else is not inside this tunnel of light. It's just me and the object I'm focusing on. You should do that before you start any of the rest of this. The technique is only slightly different if you are attempting to determine what you should procure for someone else. When you begin by sending your heart ray into the object, it is then necessary to picture the person for whom you have it in mind. When you hold the item, visualize them holding it instead of you. Stop at this point and do not open the scroll for light code exchange into your field. That is something you will have to do. That is something they will have to do when they receive the object. Use this process for clothes as well as any other kind of prospective purchase. Of course, items like makeup, toothbrushes, etc. are not included. Yet everything contains light code mathematical codes. It contains light mathematical codes of some form, but such necessities are manufactured with mass intention and little consciousness. They bear no form that connects to ancient archetypes and are little more than pulp, as Thoth calls it, in the genre of light encoding. Needless to say, this sort of shopping will take you much longer than the ordinary kind, yet you're not shopping for quantity, but light quality. The care and feeding of sacred objects. When you have purchased these items, make sure that you wrap them separately for your continued journey and travels and journey home. But first, take each piece into your hands and visualize a package of light around it, asking that the object be shielded from mixing with any other vibrations. Upon arriving home, place the objects which are to be yours on an altar that has gone through a cleansing and ritual preparation by you, which would in essence be invoking the sacred into that space. This could be an altar you already have or one you have created just for these artifacts. Now, I don't know that if you already have an altar and you've really worked it and it's full of light, that you really have to try to, reprogram it any. If you feel like you need to, yes, but if you don't. But if you're setting it up for the first time, obviously you want to prepare it for this. Now, the objects that you place from your trip onto the altar, they should be left upon the altar for at least 2 weeks. Then, if you wish, you may place them elsewhere, but make sure you ask Spirit to help you find just the right place for them. Jewelry, when not being worn or sitting on the altar, should be individually wrapped in cloth, preferably silk, and stored as a vibrational in a vibrationally neutral location as possible. You do not have to wait 2 weeks to wear the jewelry while it sits on your altar. Simply place it there when you are not wearing it. In fact, I would say that, wearing it when you first get it in that location is a very powerful thing to do. Those items designated for others should be sent to their new owners as soon as possible. In the meantime, keep them together in a neutral location, still individually wrapped. Even the pocketing of a stone from the ground of a sacred site should follow the steps outlined here. In utilizing these procedures, you should find a greater pleasure in feeling of unattached bonding to the treasures which you collect on your sacred passages through the land. And now we come to the eating of the cuisine, which is pretty much a no-brainer, but I included it anyway. So that all bases are covered, Thoth suggested that I cover the topic of food in this chapter as well. Eating in a foreign country can be tricky business. As we all know, our bodies sometimes rebel at the experience. A procedure to follow for bringing your body into acceptance of unusual foodstuffs is to place your hands over the meal and ask that it be attuned to your biophysical system and be easily digested and assimilated into your body. It is not that different from saying grace with an added dimension to it. I should also add, though, that you should, ask that it be cleansed of any foreign things that shouldn't go into your body, microbes, toxins of any kind. We should always do that with our food, especially nowadays. But that should be an extra emphasis if you're traveling abroad or anywhere that's not in your normal atmosphere. Of course, at this point in time, I could not recommend more highly that you wear a piece of shungite on your body during the entire trip, because shungite is the item that's going to cleanse and purify. In fact, if you take 3 pieces of shungite, it has to be 3 little tiny pieces, but they have to be 3 separate pieces. Take them with you on your journey and put them in the water you drink, in anything you're drinking. Put the shungite in there. Of course, don't forget and walk off and leave your shungite in a restaurant glass, but in your water bottle that you carry with you, excuse me, just a moment. Anything like that. And of course, you can't put it in your food, but if you're drinking shungite water on the journey and any other things you're drinking, your body's going to be full of that field, and it really kills stuff. So, and not in a hard, not in a hugely purifying way that's going to upset you. But I would suggest that if you've not drunk shungite water previously, that you start drinking it quite a bit before your journey, because it will do a little bit of cleansing here and there. Gentle enough, but you want that out of the way. So the next article, not article, but chapter. Chapter 4, The Dreamtime Voyager. I believe this is actually it's the second to last chapter, but the chapters are short here. Again, as with all aspects of spiritual work, dreaming is very much an individual experience. Some people proclaim that they do not dream at all, while others seem to have active and magical dream states. First, let it be affirmed that everyone dreams, whether or not they are able to retain the memory of it once fully awake. But the activity of the brain to produce images during sleep cycles is only a tiny chip in the great machine of the subconscious, and an even more minuscule component of the true mystical and sacred dream time. For a moment, let us explore this dream time according to the record of Thoth. When a person delves into the unconscious state we know as sleep, her body is at rest, yet the mind is active, throwing off and working through fears, desires, and built-up confusion from the everyday world. Most of this action occurs in what we call here the stage one dreaming. In this realm of dream time, not much is actually resolved. True, some aspects will find their level of organization in the subconscious for future work in the physical, but mostly this is what one might call the recycling zone. These emotional fragments are simply refiled with a tag of insufficient data. Stage 2 dreaming goes a bit deeper. Here, the higher self has some input and helps the magnetic emotional body to make some sense of the stacks of files covering the table of the mind in disarray. In these dreams, definition of purpose becomes clearer and the symbology is more visible to the mind. While all the answers are not present, there is a message here. It is one that very often needs to be taken into meditation upon awakening in order for it to be decoded into the now. Stage 3 dreamings are usually rare and profound expressions of the sacred presented as living alternate realities in your dream time. Once received, there is no doubt about them. They move beyond magical into virtual knowing. Yet there is more. Stage 4 dreaming does not involve sleep. One does slip into an altered state, but not that deeply in a biophysical sense. Here, the conscious mind guides the lower faculties to a conjuncto with sacred realms of being, in which the dreamer becomes a co-creator in an alternate reality. When a person is truly able to elicit stage 4 dreaming at will, they have reached the interior of what is now commonly called a shamanic experience. They need not ascribe to a specific cultural religious training to connect with their shamanic selves, yet much interplane work would have occurred to initiate them into this level. It is here that the path divides into the fork, which Thoth equates to the trident of Neptune. The one path is toward actualization of personal desire. The other invests the whole being of the individual into the work of spirit, surrendering the personal will to it, and thus becoming empowered with the divine. The middle path is the zone of indecision, where one called cannot free him herself from the lesser nature, nor can they abandon spirit. Thus, neither path holds creative power for him or her. For those experimenting with stage 4 dreaming, it is strongly suggested that you request a high spiritual guide to be present with you and guide you through the process. The secret of true sacred dreaming, spirit dreaming, is to not dream the dream, but allow the dream to dream you. You are still a co-creator, but one who has surrendered to the divine inscription in all things, so that all you create is merely a recreation of your own divine nature. I'm going to read that again. I did it so poorly, and it's really powerful, so I'm going to do it again. This little part here. Okay. For those experimenting with stage 4 dreaming, it is strongly suggested that you request a high spiritual guide to be present with you and guide you through the process. The secret of true sacred spirit dreaming is to not dream the dream, but allow the dream to dream you. You are still a co-creator, but one who has surrendered to the divine inscription in all things, so that all you create is merely a recreation of your own divine nature. The fifth dreaming. We have the fifth dreaming. Herein is the most sacred of dreamtime realms. It is one that cannot be described within the confines of the written word. Yet Thoth tells me that the fifth dreaming is the fire within. It is the Holy Spirit entering the condition of mind that harbors reason, dismantling that reason and replacing it with light eternal. Since the planetary fall from grace, only such beings as the Master Jesus, Buddha, and a handful of others on this planet have ever fully experienced this state of dreamtime. The key is fully. That doesn't mean you can't touch upon it. If you're in the fourth dream and you're really, really peaking in that, you will have quantum bursts into the fifth dream. Dreaming the sacred journey. Let us return to the topic at present, which is your dreamtime connection to the sacred journey. The steps to realizing a more fulfilling encounter in your pre-voyage dream passage are as follows. 1. Set the intent in your mind to open the scroll to deeper sacred dreaming in preparation for your physical voyage and attendant spiritual initiation. 2. Pray and invoke this intent through heart-centered consciousness. Did I say 3? That's 2. Okay, 3, just before you go to sleep, ask the higher guides and mentors to safely take you into the realms you need to enter in order to make you ready for your upcoming real-time experience. 4, when attempting to elicit fourth-stage dreaming, call upon the mentors to assist you in your discernment and determination. Remember, enter this realm with the intent to be dreamed by the dream. And 5, remain open and yet detached from all outcomes. Happy Dreamtime Trails. So we have just one little bit left here, and this is chapter 5. Oops, sorry about this, the pages are sticking again. Okay, there we go. Going forth with the gods. In working with the sacred, one enters the realm of what we shall call here mentors and archetypes. Mentors are all manner of ensouled or angelic beings of light who are in your space to assist you on your journey, and probably assist you on your whole journey of life. Archetypes are somewhat more difficult to comprehend in our way of thinking. There are various levels of archetypes, the more mundane definition being any composite of attributes which is identified in a specific symbology and further repeatedly accessed in a determinate focus by many minds. Under this umbrella of definitions, such divergent forms as Coca-Cola, and I have Michael Jackson here because this was the 90s, so we could say, I don't know any of the modern ones that are out there that everybody's raving about, but a person or a thing, something like that really people focus on with either hate or love. You can take a few on one side of the track there. would form an archetype. It doesn't have to be a good archetype. It'd be one that just brings you, into fits of anger, which is hopefully you won't go there. But a lot of people do. And that those kinds of archetypes are archetypes, whether they're good, bad, or indifferent. They're what we make them. We must use the word beings loosely in regard to our understanding, but they are a form of sentience which has been created in various ways. To further clarify, Thoth has aided me in putting together a basic definitive of these archetypes. So before I go any further, even Coca-Cola is a being, because it's not the drink, it's not the item, it's not the thing that they're selling. It's when you see a sign that says Coca-Cola, when you see somebody drinking a Coke, what is that impression that you're receiving that has actually been multiplied by a zillion minds on the planet? For instance, I wouldn't touch a can of Coca-Cola. I never drank it very much, but now I consider it poison. It takes grease off of driveways. So to me, it's awful. But I was raised with the logo of Coca-Cola in my mind. So when I see somebody refreshingly drink Coke, the first thing that comes to mind is, oh, and then I go, oh, no, I don't want to go there, But that is because the whole structure of the mass consciousness is behind the, about the Coca-Cola. See? Okay, here we go. We're going to go through the basic definitives of these archetypes as given by Thoth. 1. Mundane archetypes, non-sentient. Any label with which many people can identify, which is non-living, such as a popular product or value. These are the lowest, most often violated archetypes. They are usually a creation of mass planetary consciousness and thus inertia, and many may even carry strong negative charges, although some can be very positive. 2. Mortal archetypes, associated with living or once living humans or animal beings, developed as a result of the lifetime of that being. This could include anyone from Marilyn Monroe to Hitler, but not Jesus Christ, Buddha, or Thoth. For although they once lived in the mortal realm, the presence of their archetypes was created before their births. This is an important point. Immortal archetypes is the third. Here we find Jesus, Buddha, and a host of other once living persons, such as Horus and Thoth. While human beings filled these slots at one time, the archetypes they personified and built upon were created by illumined, non-incarnated souls long before these persons lived. Most of the immortals are of a highly refined spiritual light, although some have been turned by powerfully negative forces. These forces fed from the fears of the sentient consciousness of this planet. Then we have number 4, primordial archetypes, the most ancient and removed from our conception of what is. These are sentient archetypes which have never been attached to an ensouled being. Their consciousness is omnipresent and not consigned to a persona or personalization. This consciousness was created through angelic resonance or sounding in the creational fires of the universe. Some of these primordials were drawn to this planet through the Earth's own creation resonance, and since then have become more mutable with our planetary consciousness. An example of such an archetype is Sekhmet. She has been expressed as Ishtar, Inanna, Kali, and is revealed in several other cultural formats, yet they all present the same primordial archetype. Most Earth-descended primordials are not known to us, for they have not survived the pen of historians. Perhaps they weren't penned in the first place. Pause for a sip of water here. Oops, I can't get to it with my microphone. Excuse me. There. Primordial archetypes are largely a power, a force of a specific qualification. To broaden the stroke of the brush in painting you a picture of a primordial, we will profile the most dynamic one of our world, Gaia, or Earth herself. And this is good because, of course, we're working with Gaia so intensely right now through the TESO protocol and grid. It's interesting that I'm reading this right now. Within this planet resides a primordial being. Her body is the planet we live upon. We may speak poetically of the soul of the earth, but in fact we are her soul, and she our archetypal vessel into spirit. While summoning or working with a primordial archetype, one must first have clarity in their intent and a measure of balance within their duality. If not, the ancient creative forces of these beings will devour the personal shell we fondly call our identity. This would be a positive transformation if that soul were spiritually evolved to the level of accepting such a leap into the void. If not, it could be a seriously disorienting experience. Thus, it is best to interact with primordials with the intent that you are not wishing to draw the whole being into your experience, but only that portion which yourself can integrate. As with all sentient archetypes, intent in the program is the program manager of the cosmic web in which they dwell. How to work with the mentors and archetypes. There are many ways one may enter the matrix of interaction with mentors and archetypes. What is given here is a suggested format through which you may create a link to that matrix and allow your higher self to take you further from that point. With a mentor, it is a matter of relaxation and summoning. First, you relax your physical system so that you can receive communion from the radiant ones in a deep state of your cellular being, and not just in the mental, emotional body. Then think of the higher lords and feel your love for them and theirs for you. Once the heart is singing with this light, you simply call upon the mentors. Do not qualify your need at first. Allow an association to build, to move through your inner experience. Then, when you feel this bond take place, you may state your request, if indeed you have one. Be sure that you are prepared to receive the help for which you are asking, without the personal lens of qualification you may have applied to it. Mentors of light will always guide you toward the essence of the matter and not the outer form. Let me read that again. Mentors of light will always guide you toward the essence of the matter and not the outer form. Before calling upon an archetype, relaxation is again important. Once ready for the actual summoning, one should think of the matrix involved as a temple with a specific entry code and structure. As you come to the door of the temple, you request entrance. Once inside, observe the signs that await you. Archetypes are by nature hidden in their full expression from the soul of the seeker. Do not press the issue for full disclosure. Instead, observe the signs and symbols. If you are not too adept in visualizing, feelings can be just as communicated. Once you have integrated to a degree within the temple, you may feel or see an aspect of the actual archetype itself. When an archetype is presented to you, open your being and take that archetype or archetypal aspect within you so you become it. Here is where your personal identity may become a bit slippery. Ask that you be able to maintain both your higher self identity and what is being brought to you by the archetype in equal balance and parity. Lower self-identifications will quite possibly fall away, at least during and possibly for some time after the merging. It is not advisable to try this at first with primordials. Begin instead with the immortals. In doing so, the soul entity who is incorporated into the immortal archetype will very often help you into a smooth merging with its archetype. With the primordials, there is no soul being to help you, only the power and vastness of the universal energy from which universal energy form you are interacting with. This mutable state of oneness with the archetype should last no more than a few moments. At that point, the archetype moves through you and into a field in which it takes what is that part of you that needs expression in its realm. Here, you have become involved with your own personal experience, in which you may have revelations on many levels of awareness. Now, this process is not something to approach in a cavalier fashion, obviously. And I really feel that working with the archetypes of the immortals is the best way to go. The primordial thing, That should be reserved for people who really know their stuff with that. I'm not saying that they would be harmed terribly if you're working with Sekhmet or whatever, but it's just better to not do that. I would say, like for instance, okay, we went in Egypt. We went into the what is that big temple there? I'm so bad at names, I can't think of it, but it's the giant one with all the big pillars and everything. In the very back, there's this tiny little granite vault, and inside it, I mean, you can walk in there. It's a little room, and inside it is this giant statue of Sekhmet. And I want to tell you, you walk in there, and your hair curls. If it's curled, it straightens. Something happens because it is so powerful and fabulous. It's not negative at all. It's just the power is so much. It's just, you have to keep breathing to be able to just be there in that presence. And we went through some incredible things with Sekhmet in there, and we touched the primordial, and it was wonderful. So I don't want to say don't do it, but I'm just saying that you don't want to start out with primordials, and you want to be adept at working with these kinds of energies before you enter that field. And there's not a lot of primordials that we're even aware of. Sekhmet is the only one that comes to mind at the moment. I know there's others, but I just can't think of them right now. And I mean, we know that Set is a primordial too. I think he is, but you don't want to deal with him. It's not a place to go. But with Sekhmet, it was so strong that our tourist guide ran out of the room. He was terrified. He was Egyptian, but he was also educated in the United States, and a very intelligent young man. But it freaked him out. As an Egyptian, it freaked him out. And he said, Sekhmet's punishing me because I've been bad. And, some of his own guilty thoughts arising there. But it wasn't that at all, of course. It was just the energy was so powerful. Okay, so we have just one little paragraph left here. An important note: when the archetype is merging with you, do not form an attachment to it or to its definition. Simply embrace and release. Okay, then it says, as the last paragraph, in order for true synergy between an ensouled mortal and an immortal or primordial archetype to take place, the Adam Kadmon template within the human form will become the interfacing mechanism. The Adam Kadmon is the original universal prototype for the human race. After the fall of the Adamic race, the human form was greatly altered, not so much in appearance, but in light-engendered substance. But humanity still maintains the program codes for the template of this sacred human being. Thus, it is through this template that the archetypes link into our divinity. There are certain points upon the human body where this interfacing occurs. These links form specific archetype workings. The sacred magic of the Atlanteans and Egyptians, amongst others, contained highly defined science concerning these interfaces and how to open them and for what purposes. Most of these procedures are not for the uninitiated, but Thoth wished me to write about it briefly here so that you may receive in energy essence the larger scope of our relationship with the archetypes. What has been presented to you in this chapter concerning them is but a mere slice of the whole apple, yet it will hopefully serve to give you an overview of the essence and nature of archetypes, both universally and in our lives. And that is the end, except, of course, for the mantras, which I'm going to do a little short part 2 to this video, and we will work with these mantras. So thank you for listening.